And now we know that that's actually in place. We'll get started. All right. Good afternoon, and thank you for attending Intentionally's Friends Book Club. Coming to you live from Intentionally Studios, right outside of Philadelphia in King of Prussia, PA. Our special guest, Asia Evans, author of Feel Good Finance, available on Amazon and all major book outlets. I'm going to just show you the look of the book. My background might be taking it away. There we go. It's blending in together. Before I introduce Asia, let me go through a few introductions and some housekeeping arrangements just to make sure that we are aware of how today will go. My name is Ashley Sophia Taylor, host of today's book club and director of account strategy here at Intentionally. And today I'm joined by Asia Evans. As I mentioned today, she is the author of Feel Good Finance. A big shout out to the CEO and of Intentionally and co-founder Kelly Waltrick, who conceived the idea of book club and let us run with it, and also who used to host Tina Powell. We all know who Tina Powell is. We love her dearly. And she was also the driver in getting this book club to become what it is. You can also visit our website Intentionally to subscribe and get the latest updates of all of our upcoming book clubs and meetings and guests. And if there's anytime someone that you might think would work best for our book club, please email us at intentionally at bookclub.com, and we'll definitely add them to our roster heading into 2026. If you're having any questions or comments or technical issues, please send us a message in the chat and we'll get to them as soon as possible. This book club is being recorded and it will be made available to our participants that joined the book club and registered for this event. And lastly, we appreciate the courteousness of your time and attention today. Understand that this program is educational in nature and not offering any financial advice specific to your financial circumstances. Please consult with a registered financial professional for any financial questions that you might have. And without further ado, I now introduce Asia. I'm just going to read a quick background on you. They already know who you are, but just to provide some initial insight, Asia is a board certified therapist, speaker, and writer specializing in financial therapy. Armed with internal optimism and a passion for helping others, I love that. Asia has been in the mental health industry for over a decade. After going through her own financial awakening, which you can explore in her book, which she talks about in the first few chapters, Asia made financial therapy a pillar of her work. Asia is determined to help more people break the taboo of keeping money and emotions secrets, to strive to create a safe, comfortable, judgment-free space to begin work towards a better you for tomorrow. In addition to her practice, Asia is the president-elect of the Financial Therapy Association Board and the author of Feel Good Finance, which we will be discussing today. She is on a mission to get more people engaged in living their best lives while tuning to their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors around money. Outside of work, you can find Asia chasing her two young children as they hunt down the next delicious place to eat, which we know I love food. So every time I hear eat, I think I almost skip the rest of the bio. And I'm like, she's also with her kids eating food. That's the best part.
Trying.
All right. So first things first, have to ask the first question, because one of the things that you and I had talked about previously was the emotion around this book, right? And we talk about the connection between money and finance. What made you write this book, and what were you hoping that readers feel after finishing it?
Yeah, so I think, and thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here and talk about this, and just the fact that people are reading my book and taking the time to, get honest with themselves and interrogate their own feelings a little bit about money, I think is honestly answering the question of like why I wrote this book. And a lot of it was by way of me needing it too. When I went through my whole financial awakening, probably about 10 years ago, I just wanted to really understand why people weren't talking about their money and their feelings. So I was a 20 something living in New York City, just trying to figure it out. At that time, I was making more money than I ever had before, and I was confused why I couldn't afford some of the things that my friends could do. I was upset, and then finding myself feeling bad about myself and just feeling a little discouraged about my own self-esteem and where I'm at in my life and what I can and can't do. And that really was like really eye-opening for me because I have pretty healthy self-esteem. So I'm like, what is going on here? So I wrote Feel Good Finance because I really wanted people to start interrogating those questions and those feelings a little bit more, to not brush past, oh, they just make more money than me, but why do you feel bad? Like, what's going on? So I wrote the book that I wanted to read about when I was first learning about money and my own feelings and personal finance in general.
I love that. I definitely love that because I feel like sometimes the notion is that people are like, "Oh, I'll make more money and then I'll get better at my finances," and then they make more money and that day never happens.
Right.
Um, so you talk about the connection between financial habits and emotional well-being. Can you share a moment from your own life? Maybe it was when you were in your 20s and trying to figure out your financial space, when you recognize the link being the most powerful.
Yeah, so I think it's really easy to get caught up when you are hanging out with your friends in comparison, especially now with social media. It's so easy to just be like, how are they spending the whole summer in Europe? I want to go on these great trips. Why can't I afford all these things? So that definitely was a hang up that I was struggling with at that time. In my 20s, I want to say it was a little bit more keep up with the Joneses than I like. I don't like that I was really struggling with that, but it makes sense developmentally with the age. Like, no, if all your friends are doing it, you want to do it too. It was a mixture of FOMO, but it was also a mixture of wanting to keep up with the Joneses, which I talk about and share multiple times in the book, just different times in my life. But in my, early to mid 20s, I wanted to do everything else my friends could do, and they were having a good time, right? Like it was a good
Yeah.
time. So I think now I look back and I can give myself grace, but at the time I was really bothered that I couldn't keep up in that way. And it felt so important to be able to keep up as well.
I just want to dive into one of the things that you said about social media. How do you feel like that keeping up with the Joneses? I feel like has been a term since maybe the 60s or 70s, just like in general, right? Usage. But now with social media, how do you feel like that makes an impact with trying to keep up outside of that friend group?
Yeah, oh, it can be so detrimental, honestly. And I am not a staunch hater of social media. I think it's a double-edged sword. I think social is a really beautiful place for people to build connection and community. Like there are some really cool hobbies and like obscure things that people are interested in, and being able to connect to people around the world who are also interested to me is amazing, and that's very powerful. But with that comes the ability to see what feels like the inside of somebody's life. But the problem with that is that you don't know the details. And I think
Yeah.
that can be really hard for people to get the full picture when it seems like somebody's showing you so much of their life, but you have no idea what's in their bank account. You have no idea who's bankrolling this. You have no idea if they have tons of debt. You just don't know some of the details. And compared to before, when we say keeping up with the Joneses, it was like, oh, you saw your neighbor, you might see their car, you might see if they get a delivery of something
Yeah.
big kind of thing. You weren't always like walking in and seeing what they were doing. But with social media, you see the luxury hotel somebody might be in, you see the huge hauls they might be getting, whether they're sponsored or not, whether it's free for them or is sent to them, you see these hauls, and it's really easy to compare yourself and say, why am I not doing that? Or what's wrong with me? Am I doing something wrong? And starting to kind of negatively talk to yourself based on what you think your peers are doing too. But again, we don't get the full scope or the full picture when we're looking at social.
Agreed. Agreed. So one of the other things that you talked about is the stories from your family and culture, but specifically inheriting money stories. What's one common money belief you see holding people back, whether that be from their past or even just an experience with their own family? And how do you help them reframe it?
Yeah, so there are a few things that come up for people. I think a lot of times, especially when I'm working with women, which majority of my client caseload right now is women, but a lot of kind of some of these money beliefs are like, I don't know enough. I need more information before I can do anything. We all kind of want to be experts before we make any kind of move. So, and I bring this up particularly when we start talking about investing. I think it's really easy for people to assume that they need to be this finance bro who has an MBA in finance. They're doing all the financial things. They are experts. They're day trading, all of this. And none of that is true. I want people to know that if you have a 401k that you put your money into and it's actually in the account there, it's in the market, very important to make sure it's actually in there. Um, that you're investing. And it literally can be that simple. If you want to go deeper, if you want to learn more, great. There are amazing resources out there for you to learn more. But I think what comes up the most is that people feel like they need to be an expert before they can even start. And I think sometimes that really holds us back from growing our money because we're so worried about a misstep versus like there is a inherent risk, right? Like a lot of times it does pay off, a majority of times it does with the length of time, of course, but I think it really does hold us back when we don't want to take the risk because we don't feel like we're a like financial professional. Like we need to have all the information if we're not an expert.
Yeah, agreed. I know a lot of people I've talked about with just investing a small amount of money. They always look at me like I'm crazy, and I'm like, no, you don't need $5 million to invest in Tesla. There's other options.
Right.
Okay.
You can do something else. And that's such a perfect example. I think it's really easy for people to say, oh, well, if I'm not investing $1,000 a month, it's pointless. If I'm not investing this X amount of money, who decided this amount of money? It literally could be $50 is better than nothing. $50 of compounding interest is better than nothing. $50 in the market at a decent rate of return, a very conservative rate would be like 7%, is better than nothing. So please
Great.
invest, even if it's not a lot, and hopefully eventually you'll get to the point where you can put in more, and that will be even better.
Agreed. Agreed. So as a therapist, which I feel that was your first career, it kind of, financial therapist came after, I'm assuming.
Yes. Yep.
Um, yeah. So how do you balance the energy and the energy between like encouraging people with their financial literacy, but also validating their emotions behind the emotions that they carry behind money?
Yeah, so this to me is just like an evolution of my career. It's the same work. Like none of this is so different than when I was solely seeing people with mental health. It's just kind of like, oh, I'm focused on this aspect of people's lives. So the same things come up. I just might be adding more resources like the financial education piece, but I think you have to have both. You need to understand, yes, some of the core competencies around personal finance, understanding a checking account, a savings account, high yield savings account, where you might be able to put your retirement, if that's a work benefit or not, like what that looks like. But other than that, you also need to understand your emotions connected to money, your relationship with money, your propensity for certain financial behaviors. Like you need to understand yourself. And that's really the core of my work. Somebody could go read a book, right? Like you could read a book and get the
Yeah.
financial education. That's great. But if you aren't taking the time to really dissect and get honest with yourself about your feelings and your habits and your behaviors with money, you may, even with all the information in the world, be repeating the same exact um, patterns that you may want to change. And if that's the case, then that means it's time to have a few conversations, sometimes hard conversations, to allow yourself to learn how to move out of some of those old patterns that you want to get rid of and what to do to start new ones.
Great. And I do also want to make the disclaimer that like, we were talking about like investing just little bits amounts. Like this book, well, I will say is for everyone. It's not for people who might be in severe amount of debt. It's not for people who don't have any savings, for people who have a savings, for people who don't have debt. This book is literally for everyone to understand their emotional well-being around their finances. So I do want to make that note because we want everyone to see the beauty behind it, finding that alignment. So within this, if someone is feeling overwhelmed and doesn't know where to start, what's one simple feel good financial action that they can take away from today?
Yeah, I would definitely say just take a breath. Um, it's so easy to get consumed with all of the information out there and who's right and who's wrong, and I'm not doing enough and I should be doing more. You can really bog yourself down and really stress yourself out. I need you to just breathe and calm down and take a pause. Do not do any money moves when you're feeling stressed out. And just calm yourself down. And then when you are calm, we can start to figure out a plan, figure out what you can do. And another thing I would just say too to people is that they're not alone. I think it's so easy for people to assume that everybody's got this, everybody understands, everyone feels great about their money, everyone's rich, they're thriving, you're doing the worst. That is not the case, my friend. You are not the only person struggling with this. And even when people aren't struggling with this, there may be times where things get harder or there's a shift coming and you spend more money. I was just talking to a client more recently who recently lost a parent, and she was like, "Oh my goodness, my shopping has been out of control." And I was like, "Well, yeah, girl, like that's one of your coping strategies. You may not like it all the time, but you are also grieving. This major thing happened in your life. So we can give you a little grace when it comes to like, okay, you've been going over your budget. All right, let's restart, right? It's close to the beginning of the month. How can we get back on track?" So just giving yourself some grace and understanding that sometimes you need a little pause to be nice to yourself, and that knowing that you're not the only person going through it.
I love that. I think that is the biggest, one of the biggest things that people stay silent around for many issues. You know, obviously money involved, but specifically money, people will really stay quiet around any issues that they might be having and suffer in silence. And money, as we it's always just something that's said, almost like keeping up with the Joneses. Money is the number one reason why people end up divorced or not together or relationships ending, instead of having those thorough conversations. So, when money conversations can also feel heavy or stressful, how do you bring joy or even playfulness into financial wellness, especially because it's so important? What's your go to conversation starter or practical tool for helping people talk about money without conflict or shame? I'm even going to throw in another element to it with their families, right? That's
Hmm.
important too.
Yeah, so first I'm going to say individually for people, I love seeing people light up when they start talking about their dreams and their hopes for the future. For some people, that might be defining their why, right? Why are you doing this? Why do you want to invest more? Why do you want to pay off your debt? Why do you want to get on top of your budget? And in that why, I think forward thinking and really taking the time to dream a big life and name it and say, hey, I want to do this. This is what I want us to look like. I always share for me. When I'm in retirement, I want to be a fit old lady somewhere on the Mediterranean, bopping around and probably be a little tipsy, right? Like, I want to be living my best life. I want people to be like, where is Granny Asia? What is she doing? Like, what's going on? I want people to just be asking, like, wait, she said she would fly us here? Like, what's going on? So that's really like my vision. And that's what I remind myself of when I'm trying to invest. And I think that's what people can really get excited about, right? What do you want to do? How do you want to achieve this? Why do you want to achieve it? And who is it for? Thinking about their future self. And then when it comes to having these kinds of conversations with your family, it can be so hard. So, this, as we know, money is still very taboo for people. Depending upon the age of whoever you're talking about, this could be a no-no. Like, this is not something that we talk about. We do not bring this kind of thing up. Like, absolutely not are we sharing and having these conversations. But it's really important to have, especially with aging parents or aging relatives, because you need to understand where they're at financially, if they need help, if there's an expectation that you will help, and figuring out where your healthy boundaries are. So, first, it is understanding what your boundaries are. And boundaries are so hard with family because it feels bad to say no. And it feels like
Yeah,
you're doing the wrong thing or you're being disrespectful or I'm going against my family or my culture if I say no, but I need to make sure that you're financially sound to say yes. I want to make sure that you are stable enough to say yes without it sinking your ship, and then potentially being really detrimental to both of you. So, figuring out those healthy boundaries and having the conversations about forward planning for, the aging people in your life is going to be really important.
I agree with you. That one, two things come to mind. One is the season, I think it's season 5 of Insecure. I don't know if you watch Insecure, but when Molly's planning her parents' retirement and she brings in another character, Kelly, to help plan out the estate planning for her parents, and her mom ends up passing away shortly after. So it was really beneficial that they had those conversations. And the second thing that comes to mind is that boundary. I always say this to my yoga class: boundaries are for you, not other people. And so sometimes when we forget that, we want people to follow our boundaries and we get so upset. But if you set them in a strong place, it really does help with the execution of how those boundaries are respected. And even
Yeah.
if they're not respected, kind of where you need to shift, especially when it comes to these greater conversations.
Right. And
Um,
that you brought it up. And I think that's really
yeah.
important. I don't I always like, and I love the way you frame that around like boundaries are for you, not the other person. And I could not agree more because what boundaries are trying to do is trying to protect you from being upset with yourself because you overstepped your own boundary over and over again, right? Like you're trying to say, oh, I know how I feel when I push myself out of my comfort zone for somebody else. They're feeling great, and I'm over here feeling like, you know, sugar honey iced tea. Like nobody wants that, right?
Exactly. No
So
one wants that.
you have to defend them even when it's hard, even when somebody says no, and them getting upset about it is actually just like none of your business. Let them be upset.
Right, exactly. Because then that's something that they may need to work through in regard to their own triggers when it comes to money conversations.
Exactly.
Many people carry around shame around debt, spending, or savings. I know that money conversations, I feel like I'm a millennial, and I feel like me and my friends have started talking about these conversations more of what we're saving, what kind of house we want to buy, how much student loan debt we have. How can you begin to replace the shame with self compassion in our money journey?
Yeah, I have so many feelings about this because I think it really does depend on where people are at. I get a lot of shame from people around kind of past money mistakes and they're upset about what they did or didn't do at a certain period of time. I'm like, well, did you know? And a lot of times the answer is no, they didn't know, but they're still upset. Like, I wish I would have known. I'm so upset that I didn't know. And I'm like, you cannot be upset with like younger you. You're upset with the 18-year-old version of yourself. Like, what? At 18, like, what in the world? Like, I really just wanted to go to school. Like, I wanted to go, I wanted to get there. I still have student loans. I went to grad school. I went to a private grad school because that felt really important to me when I was 21. Like, I look back, I'm like, yeah, I could have made a different decision, but so much of my life was informed by those years in school, and I would not have been able to go for without student loans. So I think it's really important for people to just reframe um, what was happening during that time. What were you using that money for? Where was your maturity level at during that time, right? Like sometimes it's different. Like me now, the 39-year-old version of Asia looks back and like, wow, girl, you really quit your job and traveled Europe for a little bit. That was wild. Like, but I'm so proud of myself. And that, particularly this example, that trip, really helped me ground myself in like what I wanted at that time. And that's what I needed. Now, I'm not saying everybody needs to do it, even though it's cool if you can. But I was broke. Like I wasn't like living in luxury. I was broke. So I want people to understand that the insight you have now, the wisdom that you have now, the maturity that you have now, you just did not have then. And that's okay. But we can give ourselves grace. We can move forward. What can you do now? What can you do differently? And I agree with what you and your friends are doing and sharing about it. Sharing about it really does help break up the isolation of shame. When you are feeling shameful, it's like, I'm the only one. Nobody's ever done this before. Nobody has made these crazy mistakes like me. I'm the only one in debt. Absolutely not. Like, America is in debt. Like, like,
Like
as,
trillions
truly,
dollars in debt.
like
There
the
was a
country.
there was a meme that said that it was like America's a really interesting place. They're telling me that need to have a credit score, but they're $17 trillion in debt.
Yes.
I was like, this is so great. But I agree with you. I feel like that the isolation feeling in any way, shape, or form that can just lead to so much negative reflection upon yourself. And I mean, I agree with you. I needed student loans in order to go to school. And so I've thought about that. I've definitely reflected on that to my own self, thinking, wow, like, should I have gone to school? But there's so many things that I wouldn't have sought after if I didn't have that experience. Or
Oh,
even
yeah.
going to South America, I didn't have a dollar in my pocket, but like I traveled to South America and I survived. And, all this time later, I think it really was an experience that helped shape me. So Europe helped shape you too.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Especially during that time, I was depressed. I was like a depressed therapist, which do exist out there, but I didn't know. And I think that's really important for people to just recognize that sometimes you might have to spend money to like shift your life. And that's what you're spending money for, right? And that's really important. So to then later on shame yourself for that decision where it might have felt like, oh, wow, I really needed to shake things up in my life and figure out what I wanted and what I was doing. And sometimes a little side quest somewhere else out of the country can get that for you. But again, my trip was not the trip that we're seeing on like Instagram, right? I was not
No.
Instagramming that trip. This was kind of before I was really on Instagram like that. I was at hostels, I was eating cheaply. Like, it was not the luxury that I think we all have assumed um, cross country travel can look like. And I
Yeah,
need to remember that no, it's okay to like, you are in a carry-on, you might like quite literally have a backpack and it may not be beautiful. And that's okay. You don't need it to be this fancy thing to have a beautiful experience.
agreed. It's probably be the best trip you've ever had in your life. I mean, the luxury is nice, but I will say those memories are the my favorite ones. All right. How do you see gender roles and expectations shaping people's money story, and how can women in particular reclaim their financial confidence?
Yeah, I think we need to just step into the roles, right? Like whatever that means in terms of feeling strong with our money, feeling strong about what we can or cannot do. And it's okay. I think there's this idea that if we don't, again, that I was bringing up before, if we don't know everything, it means we can't be strong enough. I'm like, you can strongly say, I don't know, and that's okay. But I'm going to find out, or I'm going to call somebody who does know, or I'm going to get some support. Don't be afraid to get the support. And I think we all need to just, I'm all about reclaiming our power and really standing in it and feeling, again, strong in that, honestly. And sometimes that means looking at some of the old money beliefs that you have and challenging them to say, no, I can do this. No, I am capable. I'm going to figure this out. What do I need to do to kind of level up and feel better about my finances? And sometimes that means just getting honest with yourself about how you actually do feel in your finances. So it takes work, right? It takes a level of introspection, but I believe we all can get there.
Agreed. Agreed. And if you could redesign the financial literacy that is taught, and I personally feel like financial literacy is not really often taught in schools or workplaces or communities. But if there was a way that we could build a program, and I know that you've been on the Savvy Ladies Power of the Ass podcast, who is working to expand that messaging of women and owning their financial futures, what would that program for you look like?
Starting way earlier. Way earlier. So I know some schools and districts and states have it in high school, some don't, some maybe middle school, but I think we need to start like the second we're talking about math in any way, shape, or form, we also need to be talking about money. Right? I have a first grader and she's doing math, so they should be talking about money and money concepts and what that looks like age appropriately, right? Developmentally age appropriate and build on from there. All of us have to navigate money. I don't care how much or how little money you have, we all have to navigate it. And until that changes, we all need to have a scaffolding around that, right? And scaffolding around our financial education. So if it was up to me, we'd be starting so much earlier. Um, we would be giving kids bank accounts, which they do, but it might be up to the parents. But if the parents don't know, everybody would be getting custodial like IRAs
I love
and
that.
right? Like start them young, start investing young. And I would say for parents or people who want to be parents in the future or people who want to support other people who want to be parents, one thing for me that was really shocking is that the way we look at college these days is kind of like, okay, you're thinking about planning for a baby, you should start saving for college, or you're pregnant, start saving for college, or the baby's here, start saving for college. We are not preparing parents for the cost of daycare. Like daycare currently is the cost of college, but nobody is like looking at it in that way. We're giving the preparation of nearly 2 decades before they go to college, but where's the preparation for daycare costs? And I would love that to change, right? Like I would love universal programs to be expanded, but I do think people who are interested in becoming parents or will not have the support, whether that's in-house or external support to grow their family, need to be aware of what daycare costs before they're kind of looking at it so they can take it into an account. So those two things would go hand in hand for me.
I agree with you. My sister, I have two nephews. One of my nephews is 9, and the other one is 5, and they live in Texas. So he just now this is the first year they don't have to pay for any form of schooling, and it is such a huge relief. And I mean, obviously, we live in the north, so it's way different when it comes to the pricing of things compared to like the southern states, or even the west is going to be different. So I agree with you, daycare is like a salary on its own. And I've heard
Really?
that for some people who are parents, that like one of the parents salary will primarily pay for the
Yeah,
entirety of their children's education. So
yeah.
it's that is a huge thing. So just to end our final question today, and I know we kind of talked about this, but is there something or a mantra or a question that you want to leave our listeners with today, that as they walk away from the conversation, they will go get your book, they will read your book, but when they walk away, what is the one thing you want them to hear in their minds?
Mm, I can live my financial best life. Like, you can. I think a lot of times we're bogged down in the stories we've told ourselves, the stories that were told to us, what feels like your own capabilities, but remembering that you can get there. It will take some time. So I want to be clear. This is not going to be easy. It's going to take time. It's not going to be immediate. We need to be a little bit more patient when it comes
Yeah.
to shifting our financial lives, especially if we're starting out in a place of either zero or potential deficit. But I think people remembering that you can live your financial best life and be okay. But it is going to take hard work, and you are also a lot of times going up against a system that wasn't designed for you. And sometimes that really does mean being upset and being angry and being sad. But I still want to believe that with the correct money moves that we all can get there.
I agree. Well, thank you so much. I truly appreciate you, A, for writing this book. I know we were having some in my back. There it
I
goes.
was like, hold
There
on,
it
I
goes.
got one. There she
Okay,
is.
perfect. Thank you for writing this book. One of the things that I loved about it was that it was straightforward, direct, and it was bringing a different idea to light that I feel like people like don't really talk about or don't even acknowledge their emotion around money. There's so many different like buzzwords and key sections and conversations that like by reading this book that will help you as an individual, you as a listener today, really understand your next steps for your financial journey. So don't forget to pick up this book today, Feel Good Finance by Asia Evans. It is on Amazon. You can find it on her website if you want to buy it there. We'll drop the link as well, or you can click the link below to access this information. And I want to say thank you, everyone, for joining us today for Book Club. It is always a pleasure to have all of you in this space to talk about what's happening in the industry, what books are being released, and the power of understanding your finances and yourself. So thank you again, Asia. I hope you have an amazing day. And yeah, thank you, everyone, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Ashley. This was great.
Awesome.